Welcome back to my channel. Please feel free to subscribe because I'm not going to lie, I haven't had that much sleep. I was very lucky to be invited to the grand final yesterday and a lot of the festivities throughout the entire week, which was phenomenal. Obviously, making these videos on YouTube is relatively new, but making videos on other platforms, which some of you guys don't know that I have, has sort of been my job for a while. So I've been extremely lucky to be able to talk about football and be involved in football and be involved in sport as a whole as a job. It's been really cool, and this YouTube channel is sort of the next evolution of that. But yeah, in saying that, I was really lucky to be invited with some brands and do some really cool things throughout the week. Got to speak to some premiership captains, got to speak to a lot of the players, pre-game and post-game and all these sorts of things. So there was a lot of festivities. It's been a huge week. It's been a huge season. And if you're a Brisbane Lions fan, absolutely incredibly. If you're a Geelong fan, it's unlucky. If you're a football fan, I'm glad you're here to watch. Please feel free to stick around and subscribe. But we're going to break down the grand final. It's going to be relatively quick because, as I said, I haven't slept that much. I mean, I'm still in the clothes that I was wearing last night. That's the sort of areas that we're in at the moment. But I raced back home from the MCG this morning, essentially. I tried to get through this. I tried to watch the game a couple of times, tried to see if I could pick up some things that I didn't pick up whilst I was at the game. I was trying to enjoy it, but I was also trying to take some notes here and there. So it's a little bit of a mismatch going on, but I appreciate you bearing with me. And I want to hear all of your thoughts and opinions and comments and everything that you thought was happening during the game. I want to hear every single last bit of it, but let's get into it. So the first thing I want to speak about is the defensive act of this game. The first quarter, probably the first half, was just a defensive slog. It wasn't necessarily good football to watch, but it was very hard football. It was tough football. It was contest and stoppage and really good defensive structures going up against each other. And you sort of, sometimes you get that in the early stage of a grand final for the first 5, 6, 7 minutes. You do get those defensive slogs, and that's what we saw. That's why we didn't see a goal for a while. The crowd was building up for the first goal for so long. It felt like it was forever. But it was because of things like this. So the first thing we're going to see here is just like the contest and the pressure and the amount of numbers that were around the football. But look at the defensive structure. So Brisbane get this clean ball out of the contest, out of the congestion. Hugh McCluggage does a really good job. We get a defensive act here from Sam DeConing. And then but what I want to speak about here is look at the amount of Brisbane players around this contest versus the Geelong players. So Brisbane are going to get a clean exit out of this contest, but look at the cover that Geelong have. So this should be a quick play. This should be quick ball movement from Brisbane. But look at the cover that Geelong have. They have cover streaming to all of the outlet players. So all of the players that are getting handball receives, Geelong are covering so well. So Dunkley's going to get this handball out. And this is usually where we see a Will Ashcroft or we see one of the other Brisbane Lions mids just be able to break through the lines. But there are players absolutely everywhere. So their ability to cover was just awesome. And that's Geelong. They force a turnover. And what do we usually see when Geelong force a turnover? Especially in their front half like they do here, they score. But again, straight off the back of this, look at the ability for the Lions to switch from offensive to defensive so very quickly. So Geelong get this ball to Sam DeConing off the turnover, and he's forced to slow down because look at the amount of Brisbane Lions players that are already set up in their defensive profile, already set up in their defensive structure. So Sam DeConing gets his football and he looks up and he goes, I can't kick it anywhere. So even off turnover, he's forced to go long and high and slow and boring. And these are the sort of things. So Dangerfield makes a really good play, but the structure that forces him to go to a genuine 1v1 contest up the line off turnover, where we usually see Geelong just fly off turnover straight through the middle of the ground, straight through the opposition and kick a goal, probably from the goal square. This was a defensive slog that characterised the majority of the first half. And when you have two really good defensive structures going up against each other, you do get these sort of scrappy situations because all of the contests are so well defended, they're so well covered. So even when McCluggage goes inside 50 here, there's just players everywhere. There are players in structures and defenders and then the ball hits the ground and we just get into a genuine scrap and their players throwing their bodies at absolutely everything. Everything is congested. Everything is scrappy. This is finals football, but it's only finals football because of the desire defensively from both teams and the structure defensively that force all of these kicks to genuine contests. Every single kick, every single marking contest felt like a real contest. There was barely any uncontested possession that was consequential. We usually see both of these teams be willing to take uncontested mark and chip their mark and chip their way up the field from their D50 to their forward 50. We just didn't see any of that because the defensive structure and the defensive willingness was just so good from both sides. And this is where I saw the first coaching move, the first coaching decision. And it was a massive part of this game that I think is really, really underrated, really, really understated, is the work of Jasper Fletcher. So I picked Jasper Fletcher if Brisbane were to win the Norm Smith. And he got damn close. But I also picked Sean Manor when I tipped Geelong to win. So I was wrong, but I'm going to say I was kind of right in the same sense. But his role was to move up to the stoppage with Sean Manor. Now, this is really, really important because the way that Geelong really like to play is their high half forwards move so far up the field that they get lost in transition. They are so happy to play with a spare man in defence for the opposition. By pushing Manor up to the stoppage or by pushing Brad Close up or Myers up, like they do here, that usually leaves Jasper Fletcher to sit as the spare, or that forces Jasper Fletcher to take Harris Andrews' man, and Harris Andrews plays as the spare. And Geelong are happy to have a spare man in their forward 50, a spare defender in their forward 50, if it means they have a spare midfielder, a spare high half forward who can not only impact at the contest, but can impact when the ball gets moving forward in the handball chains. They can create overlaps, they can create those outnumbers with their ball movement, and then just bypass the spare with really good decision making. That is where Geelong are really good, and that is where Geelong had a lot of success a few weeks ago against Brisbane. So the coaching change here from Chris Fagan and the coaching crew was to bring Jasper Fletcher up or Darcy Wilmot with Sean Manor at every single stoppage. Not only were they going one-on-one now at the stoppage, around midfield, around contest, they were also choosing not to have Harris Andrews as a spare and trusting their defenders in 5-on-5 situations. So it brought Fletcher into the game, it brought Wilmot into the game, but it also shut down one of Geelong's biggest weapons, being that overlap run from the contest, from stoppage. And that was a really, really smart decision, I thought, because we're going to see the flip side of the same thing. But notice how every single player here has a genuine one-on-one matchup. This is how Brisbane wanted to play. This is the way that Brisbane were able to win a lot of these midfield battles. But just, if you think about the game, or if you're going to go watch the replay or something like that, watch out for Fletcher, watch out for Wilmot standing next to Sean Manor at every stoppage, no matter where it is on the field, and actively Brisbane not choosing to take the spare. But then I want us to notice the difference with Brisbane here. So watch Max Holmes and watch Zach Bailey. So Zach Bailey is the high half forward, has come up to this stoppage. So the same thing that Sean Manor was doing, the same thing that Brisbane really tried to shut down. Instead, Geelong didn't try and shut that down, and they played a spare man, which is about to be Max Holmes, but a spare man behind the contest. So almost a really defensive midfielder, but almost a really poorly positioned defensive midfielder. He seems too far away to impact the contest, but he seems way too close to impact a kick contest. And that just left Zach Bailey at this stoppage by himself. So watch Atkins here is going to have to switch to Zach Bailey. That's going to allow McCluggage to stand by himself. So Brisbane shut down the Geelong spare at stoppage, and Geelong enabled Brisbane to play a spare at stoppage and then choose to have Max Holmes sitting at the back of the contest, really sort of in no man's land. So Atkins has to go to Bailey. We just saw him standing next to McCluggage. So now McCluggage, one of the most dangerous midfielders in the league, is standing by himself, and he's able to get a quick kick. But again, it goes straight over the head of Max Holmes, who is the spare, or who is the defensive midfielder, who has left Zach Bailey to be by himself at this stoppage. And that allows genuine 1v1s. So it was almost like the roles were completely reversed between the qualifying final and the grand final, where Geelong were the ones who were getting exposed by a spare around stoppage, and they were the one whose spare was essentially being useless inside their defensive 50. So again here, we're going to see Fletcher versus Manor. So Fletcher has come up to the contest here with Manor, but look, Zach Bailey is the one who's pushed up for Brisbane, who no Geelong player has gone with, and look who is the one who is able to get this stoppage clearance. And the Lions just dominated midfield, they dominated clearance, and now we started to see the first signs of cracks, not necessarily cracks, but maybe the first sign that the Lions wanted to play a high tempo, high risk style of football. So the whole entire first half, or at least for the majority of the first half, it was just a defensive slog. It was punch for punch. It was defensive structure for defensive structure. But then we started to see some random spurts of really good ball movement from each team. So it first started with Brisbane sort of early in the second quarter where we saw their first chain of possession, where we saw their first ability to create an overlap, to use the handball through the middle of the ground from their defensive 50. So again, we've got forwards like Cam Rayner pushing all the way up, getting lost in transition, and then being used in the handball game to kickstart their transition, to kickstart their movement going forward. And this was the first time that we saw Brisbane really get the ball moving quick in from their defensive 50 to their forward 50, and it's an incredible finish here from Charlie Cameron to just go straight through the middle. That is a grand final moment goal. That is beautiful. And the game started to open up, so we're really early in the third quarter here, just after halftime. And this is a Brisbane Lions play. This is a play that if you watch all of my videos about the Brisbane Lions, this is a style and a play that they really love to do out of their defensive 50, out of kick-ins, especially with Dane Zorga. They go with the long kick through the middle, but this guy never receives the football and turns and goes. It is always trying to find the handball received. It is always trying to find someone from the defensive 50, from the defensive half, to get going. So all of these guys know that they're not going to get the football. They're not the handball option here. They're the lengthening option. They want to force all of these players to move this way so that when the person does get the handball received, he's got a genuinely clear run going inside their forward half. So Josh Duncan's going to take this mark. He's never thinking about turning and kicking. He's never thinking about that. He's only thinking, how can I get this handball? And all of these players are only thinking, how can I lengthen the ground? How can I make the ground really long and hard to defend? And as soon as they were able to get this sort of ball movement, this is when we started to see the cracks open. This is when we started to see the game open up. And this is when we started to see Brisbane at their best. When the game did open up, we just saw some examples of Brisbane opening the game up. Well, when you open the game up as a Brisbane Lions player, you also open the game up for the opposition. And as soon as the game got opened up, this is when I thought Geelong would win. And this is when Chris Scott, in his press conference, was talking about, we thought we had the ball, the game being played in a way that we wanted to play the game. And this is that high octane, aggressive, high turnover style of football that Geelong is so good at. So when Chris Scott's sitting in his press conference and saying that third quarter, like, this is the style of football that we thought we would be on top in, and they were, but they just could not punish. So even when they did get some sort of ball movement going, Harris Andrews was just an absolute brick wall back there. And their ability to win one-on-one in critical contests is so good. But Geelong are happy with this, because if they can just put pressure on, this is where Geelong are at their best. And as soon as they get this forward half turnover, this is when Geelong punish teams. This is when Geelong looks so good. But they just could not do it. They could not punish they could not punish Brisbane for their mistakes. So that's a kick that Geelong usually hits. And when Jeremy Cameron's not able to impact, and when Paddy Dangerfield is held to low impact and low disposals, and when their small half forwards are held to little to no impact, and they didn't have these star factor players, and they didn't have these punishing players, Brisbane were able to play this high octane, high risk, high reward football because they weren't getting burnt on the other end. And I was completely wrong. I thought if they played that style of football, they would get burnt on the other end. And the only way you don't get burnt on the other end is if you win enough critical contests. And I didn't think they could do that against the star factor players that Geelong have going inside their forward half. So as soon as they did get the ball going off turnover here in Geelong, and they were able to get out the back. So Bo's had a really big day of sort of just getting out the back of the Brisbane Lions defensive structure. But he looks up and he knows he's got genuine one-on-ones absolutely everywhere. But again, the Lions' ability to win these critical one-on-ones. So this contest right here from Harris Andrews versus Shannon Neal is unbelievable, because Shannon Neal has the absolute prime position here. So the ball's coming in, and as soon as Shannon Neal sees the drop zone is going to be just to his left shoulder, he's got two options here. He can push him this way, protect the drop zone, turn and mark like this, or he can push him out the way and protect the drop zone and mark it front on. But he's in the absolute dominant position right now. He has back position. He controls where Harris Andrew goes in 99% of these contests. And he's a big man, Shannon Neal. He's a strong forward. He's a power forward. But Harris Andrews' ability to not only compete with this contest, but actively hold his ground, protect the drop zone himself, and take this intercept mark. This is an unbelievable effort. This is strength, and this is holding your position and being smart with your positioning, and then using your physical abilities and your just raw strength and will to win a critical contest. The only way you don't get burnt on the other end is if you do things like this. So his ability to constantly keep his eyes on the football, to plant that left leg and protect the drop zone and get the dominant position away from Shannon Neal. That is just unbelievable stuff. And these critical contests weren't just defensively, they were also offensively. So look at the work here from Ty Gallup. So we've got a young, emerging key forward who's had some really good moments in the last couple of weeks. But his ability to just beeline this football, to attack the football, to attack the contest, because if he doesn't, Geelong are out the back and Geelong are going to go forward and they're going to get another chance to score. And at this point, the game is on the line. These are the contests that won Brisbane the flag, in my opinion. So look at the work of Ty Gallup to just beeline this football, to not only beeline it, but to run through the tackle, to take on the tackle, to take on the pressure, and be able to get a really clean handball out. So he's taken away 3-4 Geelong defenders, and that allows a really good, quick re-entry inside the forward 50, which gives all of your forwards the most dominant position at this marking contest. And Charlie Cameron takes the mark, goes back and kicks the goal. And this is when the floodgates started to open. But it comes off the back of critical contests like that. So we've got critical contests with defense. We've got critical contests with power and attacking the football. How about critical contests on the ground when you are just so clean? I've heard Lachie Neale say he gets 500 touches of the football a day. He's just consistently touching footballs. He's consistently getting handballs. I think he's brought along Will Ashcroft and Jasper Fletcher into this, because look at the ability for them to be so clean around this contest. So again, the game's still on the line here. Will Ashcroft's ability to get to this football as soon as we get to the next stoppage. I messed up the timing, but if Will Ashcroft's ability to get to the fall of this football, to get to the ground level, and then be clean with him and Jasper Fletcher, this is stuff that you can't teach. This is stuff that you just have to work on. So bang, they get the turnover, ball hits the deck. Ashcroft's ability to get to ground level so quickly, and then not only get to ground level, take on the two players at ground level. He's horizontal at this point, but his ability to still find a really easy, quick, clean target, and then Jasper Fletcher's cleanliness to pick up the football and get the football out to the outside runner, that is stuff that you can't teach. That is just reps and reps and reps and reps and reps. And as soon as they got the ball moving forward with any sort of pace, like I said a few minutes ago, their small forwards just lit them up. So we've got defense, we've got power, we've got cleanliness, and now we've just got really good decision making, all in the process of winning critical contests. So O'Sullivan, if he gets this football out to Bailey Smith, he is off and running to the races. So the ability for Will Ashcroft to put enough pressure on here. But what we don't see off screen is Dane Zorko leave his man and come and put the pressure on Smith, to put the pressure on this handball. And if Smith gets a clean run at this football, he is going to not only be able to run forward probably 200-300 meters into the goal, he's going to be able to create an overlap. So Zorko would then have to come and defend him. He'd get the handball over the top to the forward that Zorko was playing on, and Geelong are going to basically stroll into an open goal. Ollie Dempsey's probably standing in the goal square waiting for a goal. But Dane Zorko's ability to be decisive and be so trustworthy in his ability to just take this contest on. So as soon as ball hits the ground, if Smith picks this up, he's absolutely off and running. What we don't see again is Dane Zorko off screen, come from absolute nowhere, leave his man, attack the contest, be really smart with his decision making. He's not just putting that on the boot, bang. So his ability to his decision making in these critical moments is just wonderful to watch. And that's when you get something like Lachie Neale going bang from 50, and you get the wonderful moment of Neale kicking a goal in this grand final. And there's really only two more things to cover, because we go into three-quarter time and Brisbane have all the momentum in the world off the back of those critical contests, and we come out of three-quarter time and we just get more critical contests, and that is what is setting up the Brisbane Lions for winning this flag. This is when the game is essentially over. As soon as Rayner leaves his man and creates that sort of contest, creates that sort of turnover with that sort of tackle, and again, Brisbane get to go inside forward 50, Charlie Cameron goes back and kicks a goal. But it comes from the back of those just incredible contests from Cam Rayner. And then I think this was the nail in the coffin. 15 minutes left, down 5 goals. You're about to be down 6 goals. This was the turning point. This was this was the final nail in the coffin. And it comes from cleanliness, but it also comes from a Geelong lack of structure here. So Bailey Smith here is understanding that Will Ashcroft is standing at this contest completely, but no one's near him. And he's pointing going, can someone stand next to the reigning Norm Smith medalist, now back-to-back Norm Smith medalist? Can someone maybe go and stand next to the bloke who's had 40 touches of football today? So he's pointing and going, someone stand next to him, someone stand next to him. I'm on Lachie Neale. And now he's caught in no man's land because Myers has gone to Lachie. Smith is in absolutely all sorts here. So as soon as he's looking around going, I don't know who I'm on, no one knows who's on Lachie Neale now because Smith thought he was going to Ashcroft, but he also thinks he's on Lachie Neale. He's confused. And who gets the football? Lachie Neale, his ability to be clean, to take on the pressure here, to get a really clean handball under extreme duress, under extreme pressure, out to the bloke who was standing by himself. He goes back and kicks a goal, and he wraps up his second Norm Smith in a row at 21 or 22 years old, I don't know, wherever old he is. It is utterly ridiculous, this club. This is an incredible premiership, an incredible turnaround from a couple of weeks ago when they probably should have lost by 60 or 70 points. This was a masterclass in football. This was a genuine masterclass in football, not only tactically, but everything they did in the build-up throughout the week, everything they've done in the last 2 years, everything they've done in the last 3 years. People don't understand. People don't realize. I'm going to go on a little bit of rant here about Brisbane. People don't understand, or maybe people don't remember how bad they were for a really long time. They were bad. They had the go home 5, and after that, it was deplorable. And Chris Fagan comes in, and he's taken from genuine the depths of football slosh and sludge and trash, and turned them into what really could be a three-peat premiership if not for a Collingwood masterstroke in that last quarter. If not for that, Brisbane are holding up another three-peat premiership, and realistically, they're going to get better. This is the craziest thing. They're going to get better next year. Will Ashcroft's going to get better. Levi Ashcroft's going to get better. Jasper Fletcher is seriously my favourite player in the league at the moment. He's going to get better. Logan Morris, Ty Gallup, they're getting better. Zorko's not going anywhere. Lachie Neale's not going anywhere. McCluggage not going anywhere. Dunkley not going anywhere. They're bringing in Oscar Allen and Sam Draper. They've got Kitty Coleman and Link McCarthy and Noah Answorth on the sidelines with injury. They've got Eric Hipwood on the sidelines with injury. They've got blokes coming from absolutely everywhere. They've probably got 5 more academy draft picks coming in just a couple of weeks. These blokes are going to get so much better over the off-season, and they are the favourite to win the flag next year, as they should be. But this might be a dynasty for the next 3, 4, 5 years where they are perennially in grand final. This is a team that knows how to win the big games. They've adapted their game style to the MCG. They've got a list and a development team and a recruitment team that is just completely off the charts. They're hitting home runs left, right and centre with all of their picks. All of their good players, all of their star players are still young. All of their star players still have 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years left in them for some of them. This is a ridiculous outfit, a ridiculous premiership, a ridiculous game, and I appreciated watching the whole entire thing. And that's all I got for you, and I will see you all tomorrow. Remember, there's heaps of trade period videos coming out, so if you want to figure out why your team is picking up certain players, why certain players are leaving your team or going to different teams, we're going to be breaking down all the vision of why specific teams want specific players during the entire trade period. So please feel free to stick around and subscribe for that, and I'll see you all tomorrow. I'm going to go and get some sleep. Cheers.